And it's really an honor to have Nick, Oriana, and Amanda. They come from different places, but we all have the same concern about how to attract students to STEM, and mainly how to have a very diverse workforce or student force in STEM, because it's still not very diversified. Why learning through play? Because we think that play is the natural way that children learn. That's why it is so important to leave some room for them to play, mainly when they're very young. That helps them to relate to others, they learn to collaborate, to solve problems, and to think strategically. In the meantime, while the mind is still very active, okay? And that's, as Diego was saying, I'm from Siemens Gamesa. I worked in the social commitment department promoting STEM. And since the beginning, we started 3 years ago, it was very important for us to put play in the center of everything we were doing. We thought it was a way to attract not only very young people, but also students, to give them the possibility to learn while doing something fun, like experimenting with the surroundings, with the solutions they wanted to implement. That's why we bet on robotics, on a video game on energy and sustainability called Planet Rescues, but also that's why we are working with university. It's not play, but it's to take the theory and put it into practice. That's what it is. That's what play is. Then today, we are very lucky to have 3 professionals like Amanda Abrom, Nick Freeman, and Oriana Circelli. I'm going to let them present themselves now and talk a little bit about the topics that we are here to talk about today. I'm going to start maybe with Amanda, if you want to introduce yourself. I'm going to go clockwise.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's really an honor to get to speak to you a little bit more at this hackathon on STEM, on early childhood education, and a little bit on my background as well on education for sustainable development. And so what I do in my day-to-day work is I work at the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And I work specifically on the Global Schools program, which is a program for K through 12 educators, schools, and teachers to bring sustainability into their schools. So we really work on teacher training. Our flagship program is the Global Schools Advocates program. And last year we trained about 500 teachers to work on sustainable development literacy, experiential learning, and that encompasses STEM as well in their classrooms all across the world in about 80 countries. So I'm very excited to be here today and happy to go more in detail with my work as we get into the conversation.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Good morning. From my side, where I'm at here in the U.S., to everyone, my name is Nick Freeman, and I have the distinguished pleasure of serving as the Associate Director of Volunteer Engagement and Corporate Citizenship for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Central Florida. That's a long-winded way of saying that I work with a lot of corporate partners throughout Central Florida area, all the way up through North Florida, to bring impact opportunities to our members that we serve from age 6 to age 18. About 73% of our families are served that we serve at our traditional clubs have a household income of less than $40,000 a year. So we're dealing with a lot of an underserved population throughout the entire Central Florida area. And to that end, our STEM impact that we try to do here at the Boys and Girls Club of Central Florida is really keen on just trying to make sure that we maximize exposure. And we'll get a little bit more into that with the questions as far as like how we go about making sure that, you know, whatever opportunities aren't captured at home or whatever opportunities are captured in the school system, that we as a third pillar in the community are able to capture those opportunities for our members so they aren't defined by their zip code or by their family's annual income, and they have the same opportunities as everyone else. So I look forward to unpacking that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Oriana, now it's your turn. Would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about WoWplay?
Yes.
Wow, play, sorry.
WoWplay, thank you. I'm Oriana Circelli. I'm based in Madrid. And I'm one of the founders of WoWplay. We are a subscription of STEM projects at home, STEAM projects at home. Our idea is to allow every parent to be not just involved in the development of their children, but also to spend time with them while having fun. Because sometimes as adults, we don't have the time, or we forget about what we can do with kids and how we can be involved in their education. So we are a subscription in where families receive every month a box like this one. Actually, I have one here with me. A box like this one, in where you have all the materials you need in order to build a STEM project. It could be electricity, mechanics, coding, or science. And all of these is backed up with a methodology in where we combine hands-on activities, not this basic, with the technology, but as a tool. So for example, kids can access to tutorials, games, and different online resources to complement the offline experience. We are working with kids from 5 to 8 years old now, and focus on Spanish-speaking countries.
Thank you very much, Oriana. Well, if it's okay with you, I think that we're going to continue clockwise, okay? This discussion we had before this is our last webinar of the whole series, as I was saying before. And previously we had one on bucking the trend, the battle for girls in STEM. No, we were talking why we don't have enough women in STEM. And the first question is going to go is for you, Amanda. As your programs, global schools belong to the Sustainable Development Solution Network, that UN organization that makes sure that the students, high school education, knows about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. My question is, girls' involvement in STEM, no? Can sustainability be the trigger of motivation in girls, and why?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So thinking about this, I'm thinking of STEM as some of those, core analytical skills and skills that students need to be successful, and how that kind of ties into sustainability. So when we do work on sustainable development education across the 80 countries, there is a lot of research that shows that putting sustainability into courses, integrating this into math, technology, it does promote quality education and improved student learning. So sustainability education also ensures that students really receive holistic and quality education, helping them to have critical thinking, collaboration, problem solving, and helping them really apply their knowledge to act on and improve local disparities. And that's how I really think our work is connected to the STEM angle. And then tying in the piece about girls' involvement in STEM, what we have seen in schools is this type of education really helps students develop the knowledge and skills to navigate the challenge in their community. And we've seen a Stanford University study actually proved that education for sustainable development and experiential learning actually increased people's analytic skills and civic engagement, and even improve values on gender equality, which is some really interesting stuff there. They also saw improved math skills and improved student attendance. So just to share, 3 anecdotal pieces of what we've seen in girls' education linked to sustainable development. We had one school in Tanzania actually report increased student attendance by doing more STEM and project-based learning, sustainable development education. This is linked to, motivation to come to school, increase student attendance to engage in these projects. We also saw a school in Uganda actually use some of these experiential learning and sustainable development frameworks. Actually, they did an activity where boys and girls switched household chores to actually, allow girls to, trade chores with their peers and kind of provoke a discussion on these sorts of things around gender and girls' involvement in the community. Lastly, we saw a school in Cameroon actually, through having STEM, experiential learning and sustainable development, girls actually advocated to their school leadership and they were able to become class presidents for the first time ever in the history of the school. So I have seen examples, of course, where sustainability is the trigger of motivation for girls' involvement in experiential learning. But what I will say, just to close this out, is, students really need to have the agency to be able to take these things forward. They need to feel safe in their schools, empowered and supported by that beneficial school ecosystem, including the teachers and the admins that really allow students to take forward these actions. If they have the motivation, they still need that ecosystem to take it forward. And I'm sure, the other panelists have a lot to say on mentors and STEM and that sort of thing as well. And because they need those people to really see how those passions are related to impact. So yes, that's what I've seen with girls' motivation in STEM.
Mm-hmm. The fact that you choose to have a teachers as the center of your effort, do you think that that also has that effect of role modeling in some way,
Yeah, so our primary focus of our program is to, train teachers. How do you have this ecosystem that supports students? It's not only about the content that you're teaching, but how you teach this. Are you doing debates? Are you allowing them to discuss, et cetera? So I think, teachers can definitely become those role models for students.
Thank you, Amanda. Nick and Oriana, do you have something to share with us about the SDGs of sustainability, education, and also the teachers being the center of the effort?
I just want to add, regarding the challenge of girls in STEAM, right? And specifically when we talk about role models. And I think that one of the challenge that we have, and I think that is changing and improving, is like until now, all the role models that or the roles that we see in STEAM normally are males. And the fact of every day having more role models to follow that are women, that way you can see yourself projected. When you see a developer that is a girl and you can see her, I want to be like her. But until a few years ago, everyone you see in more technical careers, in movies, or even on your environment, normally these careers, STEM careers, will be related to male figures. And I think that one of the challenges that we have, and now is happening, is that you can see role models of an amazing woman that have a technical career, that also she can complement with her life, personal life. So it is more natural when you see it, when you grow up with a figure that have this STEM career, no? That maybe when I was a kid, this didn't happen, or it was not that common.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Oriana. I don't know, Nick, your organization is 150 years old now, nearly. It's very well consolidated in the United States. I was wondering if you have some sort of, when you do the programming and when you're in contact with all these business, is Agenda 2030 of the UN that is for the sustainable development. Is it key in the teaching? Is it part of what you teach to the children, or it's still not there?
It's absolutely, this is a great question. It's absolutely a part of what we have to teach our members. Like at the end of the day, like you can't, it's oftentimes difficult to see what isn't there, right? To see in yourself what isn't there in anyone else. Representation is pretty much everything, right? And like when you look at the numbers as far as minorities in STEM, they're unfortunately very, very low, right? And even particularly with young ladies. And so a big thing for us is just about exposure, right? It's a matter of making sure that We reach out to corporate partners and being very, very intentional about having folks to come in to, we do what's called Pathways to Success program. It's one of the many programs that we have as far as trying to get our members exposure to different professional careers under our education and career development pillar, is that we have folks come in and really discuss what their journey was, not even just like, hey, this is what I do in my day-to-day, but like, what was your journey? What kind of courses do you need to take? You know, how long were you in school? Like, what starting salaries, all of that, just to get them a sense of what that is. Because if all they see for their representation is, you know, sports athletes or entertainers and what have you, then like that becomes kind of like that's the only way I can see myself, because the folks who look like me, that's what they're doing on my TV or in my local community. That's what I see as leaders, as folks who are making it, if you will. And I don't see, you know, all the folks behind the scenes and who kind of keep things moving, particularly in the STEM field, as representation. I don't know what they don't realize that, you know, the biggest employer in our state, Disney, you know, how much the robotics and stuff are behind us. While we brought in the Disney robotics team, you know, different things like that. We partner with Siemens Gamesa for something that's come up with Minecraft and the Planet Rescue. So we have to, you know, be very, very intentional about making sure that we get them the appropriate exposure for our young boys and girls early on as possible, and give them the opportunity, kind of to what Amanda was speaking about before, as far as project-based learning, opportunities for play. That's kind of built into our after-school curriculum and infrastructure, to where every single time our members come in, it's not the kind of like the more structured environment that's in a school system, which is obviously very important also, but it's a little bit more free flowing. It's not a school, we are after school program, so we don't want to feel like school, but so we give them a lot more project-based learning opportunities to kind of really feel like organically they're learning about different things that they would never otherwise have exposure to. And then, like I said, again, having connections to folks in the community who have the resident expertise to share the steps that it takes to be, you know, in the STEM field with our members.
Thank you very much. I think that's very interesting what you were saying, and that's one of the subjects that came in the previous discussion when you were talking about the football player, about the breadwinner, no? How depending of your gender, of your racial and ethnic, where you come from, it's still there that the only way that you can get rich is just being in sports or being and in the same talking about this gap, no, that we still have. I would like to continue with you, Nick. Okay, with you. Like in some places here in the US, early education is not compulsory, and it has been identified as one of the main problems, probably, for having underrepresented groups, not only in STEM, but in the careers that are that gives you more prosperity. In that, how do you think that to what extent it's the same situation that it influences the people we have in STEM? The fact that white kids usually start with STEM when they're very young, but Afro-American don't.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just about equity. You know what I mean? I really think it's just about like ensuring that you aren't defined by your zip code, right? You aren't defined by what type of possibilities are available at your school, or the underfunding that happens at the local level at the schools, because then you don't have that exposure to those type of opportunities. And like, frankly, we all know that here in the US, they build prisons based off of third grade test scores, right? And so if you're in a situation where you're behind from the time that you're born to the time that you get to third grade, you don't have that, you have a built-in disadvantage, right? And so what we do is we recognize that as an organization. So we try to jump in as soon as they're allowed in our club at 6 years old, to try to close that gap between them and the time, so that way that exposure level is there, right? Where we try to mitigate the consequence of not having that in the early stage. But it is, quite frankly, a very, very alarming that it's still the case in our country. It's something that we definitely need to tackle on. We're doing our part as a community-based organization to try to make sure that we do our part to make sure that we fill that gap, that close that opportunity gap, if you will. With creative programs, innovative programs, activity ideas and resources for our clubs and youth that we serve. But ultimately, it's an everyone's problem. It's not just a problem. It's not shouldn't be tasked just to community-based organizations or just the schools or just the parents. Like this goes from the policymakers all the way down, right, to your everyday normal citizen. Like we need to make sure that as a society, that we make a concerted effort to put forth our best future forward, right? And because what ends up happening is that if you have things where there's only exposure on with one demographic, right, then you lose, all the the Neil deGrasse Tysons of the world and everyone else, who've done some remarkable things in STEM, but the exposure is not there, right? And so if we look at folks in the community who've really done some really fantastic things when it comes to STEM historically, like a lot of those stories, frankly, aren't being told the way that they should be as far as the impact of folks who are in STEM related fields from the very inception of our country. So I think just more of a learning from our history, putting those things in the forefront, letting role models in the community can step up and really be an influence in our schools as well as in our clubs and things of that nature, that will eventually move the needle to the direction that it needs to go. But it is certainly an all hands on deck type of approach that's required. It won't just be one entity.
Thank you, Nick. Talking about all hands on deck, Oriana, WoWplay, here the central part is also the families. I would like you to tell me a little bit more why you chose this. This is your first adventure in education, if I understand it well, with this digital solution. Could you please tell us why you chose the families at your center?
That's a very interesting question, because yes, we are focused now on families, and I think that the main reason is freedom. So our goal still is to increase the awareness of what a STEAM is. I'm talking in we are now in markets that may not be as advanced related to STEAM knowledge as could be, for example, countries as the United States. And we have the big challenge of how can we bring more kids on board of what we are doing in STEM? How can we give more knowledge to families? And actually, everything started with myself. I was asking myself, with my kids, what should I do with them in our free time together? Sometimes they come out of school and they show you things that you don't even know what they are. And I think that for me, one of the basics of STEAM is the interdisciplinarity. So the fact that you can combine and work all the letters of STEAM together and not in different assignments is key. And sometimes that is so complicated at school. So if you are trying to implement working with a STEAM inside a classroom, the change could take years, because you have content that you have to give as a professor, and you are forced to have this content. Sometimes the margin to do different things or think out of the box, it's even not imaginable, because sometimes it's just hard. So change, we also want to work with schools, but I think that a lot of people is working already with schools. The change with the schools takes longer. It's normal because organizations evolve slowly. However, if you are able, of our vision, if we are able to go directly to families, we are able to make a change faster, and we are able to work directly with the needs of kids, of parents, and we are able to personalize even more the experience. But I think that is also key now, is to be able to not educate in a way of one size fits all. It's everyone has their own intelligence, their own likes. So you can discover what you like, what you are good at. You can go in your own steps. So I think that this is one of the main reasons. Do we want to work with schools? Yes, definitely. We are building now a product for a school, but we don't want to work in a school as an extracurricular activity of programming. We want to actually make an impact inside the classroom, seeing the subjects not as mathematics, and now you have to go to arts, and then you have to go to literature. We want to make actually a space in where you can work all of them together, because when you go to outside into the real world, you're not going to have this is mathematic approach, this is something related to arts. So in the outside world of the school, everything is related, everything is combined. And I think that it's a bigger challenge for us, and we are working on it now.
You've been saying all the time STEAM, and maybe people that are in the audience have the doubt, is it she talking about STEM? Is it a pronunciation thing, or is it a different thing? Then it is a different thing, but maybe not a different thing. STEAM. Why are you talking all the time about STEAM? What is it about the A?
So for us, we are warriors of the A, and this is always why I say STEAM and not a STEM. And basically, STEAM for me is the evolution of a STEM. So STEM is the initial acronym, because we are talking about pushing or all these technical careers. And then with the years, we have discovered that you have to also complement these technical careers with the human part. And I think the A is the standard, not just for arts, but for the human size of the fields, right? So for me, it has to be implied, and actually we, in all of our projects, is implied in a transversional way. So it can help you to act as a conductor through each of our projects, because at the end, the humanity part is the one that allows you to communicate, to be more creative. And creativity is not just about build something beautiful. It's also about thinking out of the box and find different solutions for the same problem, or solve this one problem in different ways. So being able to include the arts as humanities inside the technical careers is key, because it not just helps you to communicate, but also can help you to include people with different interests. We have ourselves examples of kits that we have. One of our electric kits, it's about building your first electric circuit, but you do it with Play-Doh that you can light up a monster. So sometimes, and I see, we have an example last week, two brothers. One of them, both of them did the same project. One of them was, and both of them end up with a monster that lights up. All of them were happy, but one of them, when you ask, what do you like? What do you enjoy about the project? One of them say, no, the fact of lighting up the LED, wow, the cable. And the other one was, no, building the monsters, Play-Doh, it was so fun. So you can attract both kids. They have completely different profiles and interests, but they both work. Even the kid that was more into manualities, arts, he was also able to work on it. Because, and to close, I think that we sometimes, in my perspective, we have the misunderstanding that STEM is just about engineering and coding, and the reality is not. For me, STEAM, it's for everyone. If you want to be a gardener in your future, you will have to have digital tools and knowledge, because probably the way that you are gonna set the, I don't know how to say in English, but like the water reads in to to help with the plans, you will have to do it with digital intelligence. So for example, if you want to be an artist, you will probably have to know about blockchain and selling your art through NFT. So at the end, STEM for me is from everyone, no matter what you study, and it's something that is constantly evolving. And STEAM is about thinking out of the box, seeing different results, being creative, being able to learn constantly. And I think that it's not just about technology, coding, and gaming. And this is why we are the warriors of the A of STEAM always.
Okay, thank you, Oriana. Amanda, and before I ask you the question, just one thing for the audience, please send your questions now. We want you to hear them. We want you to be part of this discussion. But Amanda, I have a question for you that is very much related to something that is fundamental. All of the goals of the SDG are important, but probably the goal number 4 is probably the most pressing one, the most important one, because it will make us have a better and more sustainable world. And the goal number 4 is quality education for all. As you know, the agenda is for 2030. And the question for you, Amanda, how far are we to reach goal for quality education for all in 2030?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. You're absolutely right that SDG for quality education is linked to all of the other goals. It's linked to poverty, decent work, sustainable cities, sustainable communities. And to be honest, we still need to work really hard on this goal to, achieve quality education by 2030. The organization that I work for publishes a flagship sustainable development report each year. And for the second year in a row, they really saw that we're no longer making progress towards these goals. Performance on, poverty and economic growth is kind of at the pre-pandemic levels, as the pandemic has really affected education. And a lot of the huge themes we're seeing right now is that funding really needs to be mobilized for education and mobilized for the SDGs. Because we don't have universal education in all countries. We do need to work harder on building more effective learning environments. And I really work specifically on SDG target 4.7, which is on global citizenship. And as I shared earlier, sustainable development. And that for sure is not integrated into all of policy, all of teacher professional development, et cetera. So I also, when I do talk about that specific question on SDG 4, I also like to say that I think it is important to, expand global goal 4 a bit too when we think of quality education. Thinking more about refugee education, students with disabilities is not really represented, out of school children, and kind of thinking about, how the UN tracks education beyond the conventional structures, because they really talk about, pre-primary, primary, secondary. But, we don't know if these students are, behind. What are the ages of these students that are enrolled? What is the quality of that education? I also think it's important when we talk about the SDGs to kind of think beyond math and reading, because the UN really sticks to those two things when they track learning outcomes. It's really defined by numeracy for students. And yes, there is a brief mention of vocational training, but you don't really think of vocational training and early childhood as is like the conversation today on STEAM. So I'm not advocating that the UN needs to define what is the best type of pedagogy, because I 100% agree with Oriana that, each student needs a unique learning plan. But I also think there is a need in the SDGs to bring in more aspects to this conversation on education, because, these are the people that are talking about the mobilization of funding and prioritizing education. And we should bring STEM and STEAM more into these conversations, because I actually believe that the education movement should be as big as the climate movement. But yeah, that's on the SDGs. Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting what you're saying. And this question is for all of you, but it's really related to what you just said, no? About to take action. And do you think, would you have had the same conversation 2 years ago before the COVID-19? Do you think that the pandemic, and that question is really all of you, but I'm going to start with Amanda. change completely the thing? How much do you think that we are, because there was a recent report saying that we are facing a K-shaped recovery, meaning that people will go in different rhythm, and probably not every children will arrive to the same point at the same time.
Yeah, so just to follow up on what I was saying before from the UN side and the UN angle, I do think that COVID has made education more of a priority for some of these discussions happening at the UN. This year is their year of education. They're having a transformative education summit in September, and all of this will lead to a big summit of the futures next year to engage youth in what they really see as the future of education and building their own future and talking to ministers. So in that aspect, I think COVID has affected those discussions, and these discussions are more on the table. What you said on the K-shaped recovery, I do agree, like children were heavily impacted. They suffered from learning losses, and there is significant inequality in these learning losses for socio-emotional disadvantaged students and minority students. But I really do like what Nick said about not being defined by your zip code. And in my experience, we have still seen a lot of creativity from the teachers throughout the pandemic.
Thank you. Nick, do you want to add something about this discussion? Mainly because you, both of you, Amanda and Nick, are, well, in your case, Nick more, you are with children all the time in a direct.
Yes, I mean, I personally don't. I used to be a director in the clubs and worked directly hands on hand with the clubs. I'm in the corporate office now, so I don't as much. My day to day isn't, but everything that I do is focused on that, right? All the partnerships, all the individual volunteers, everything is all curated toward making sure that they have a well-rounded experience, and that they have the opportunity to have that exposure. Again, to different things to help make sure that we curate what we call a productive, responsible, caring citizen, right? And so we do that in a myriad of ways. And I think one of the big pieces that we look at now is that we started in 2019 is our Youth Arts Initiative, to kind of piggyback off what Oriana was talking about with the STEAM pieces. Like we realized on our end that we were doing some art projects and different things of that nature that we would have an event for every year and everything like that. But that was pretty much the extent of our A in our STEAM, right? And so we really started to be really focused on adding dance and adding a lot of different things to our actual pillar. And so now we have what's called a Youth Arts Initiative that we started in 2019, and it has completely exploded into all types of fine arts, dance, photography, everything. So it is. There's several programs throughout our entire movement where the exposure is there for them to really get an impact on, get a jump start on a lot of things that you lose out on right now, particularly with the pandemic, because when a lot of things shut down for us, right? And so our business model was completely inverted, right? We went from a 95% in-person business model to a 95% virtual business model, and we had to do that on the fly. And so trying to get corporate partners in and get involved, trying to deal with summer reading loss and things of that nature that we already have to deal with pre-pandemic, right? Trying to get those things, like trying to catch up and fill that gap with all the folks in the community and different things of that nature was very, very difficult. But that's the task that's hand right now, because it's only going to continue to compound as a problem if we don't continue to make sure that we targetedly address different things that are happening in our community, particularly because our community, to Amanda's point, is underserved. It is disadvantaged, right? And so, trying to make sure that we have some equilibrium there is a huge ask for everyone. But we have to do it. We have to do it, because if we don't, we put our members, and by extension our communities, in grave danger of being completely upended, right? And so then you have the situation where our economy is going to suffer greatly for it, right? That starts local, but that ends up having a global effect, right? It's going to impact me just as much here as it is Oriana where she is, and Amanda where she is. It's going to impact everyone. It's going to be a ripple effect with that. So everyone has to kind of really take stock in what's going on in their local communities and really, really dig in and make sure that all hands are on deck to make this happen for sure, because it's certainly an impact in our community right now.
That's curious what you're saying. Yesterday we have our first panel was on digital transformation in India, and at the end of we were talking about COVID, and they said that was, excuse me for the term, but it was a blessing in some way, because it suddenly they really started to have all these initiatives to make digital education much stronger, and to make all these good knowledge that they have arrive in all the country, all the part of the country, you know, that we're a little bit left behind.
Right.
Talking about, talking about COVID, what was your experience, Oriana, before I don't think we have other questions yet. Oriana.
I think that to add what Amanda and Nick said, I think that what COVID has done is to accelerate what was going to happen maybe in 10 years, it happens in 2. And I think that we can still see that acceleration happening. I can add for what I'm seeing in the private sector, because I may work in the other side, no? So we are a startup, and so we are a technological company, and we are starting. And what I can see, and is what is happening, the tendency is that, as Amanda said, the attention is in education now. So, for example, in the startup environment, being an edtech, it was a field or industry that was slower than any other. It was so complicated, and it was everything given to the schools. So I think that big changes after pandemic, one is we have attention. You can see venture capitals, different companies that are investing more than ever in education. Secondly, I think that families, entities, and private companies has understood that not everything related to education can be on hands of the schools. So education goes beyond what is happening from 8 to 2, where the kids are in the schools. So what is happening with kids are at home. What is happening with families that are not digital enough to keep what their kids are doing. Because I think that we also had a clash. I don't know how it happened in other markets, but here, when you have your kid at home and you have to go to Meets, but you didn't know, or you didn't even have a computer at home, or you didn't know how to use Meets to connect your children to the class, no? And how you keep the attention. So that also has to completely change the e-learning mindset, because it's not just about giving content. It's about how you can keep the child connected for 2, 3, 4 hours without him leaving the screen and go to the living room, because you cannot get him engaged. So I think that it has definitely speed how we were working towards digitalization, but also has put on the table the needs. And we need more than content. We have to build a way of how in the digital field we can engage children and learners to stay there, and how we can actually use that data to understand what is happening in the other side of the screen. Because it's not just about giving content, it's about having this interaction that sometimes assume it's not enough. So I think that this is bringing a lot of development. I see a very interesting projects in different fields in education. And I think that everything goes to the, again, to understand and to find a more personalized education in order to be able to work in the digital field.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering all of my questions. We have a question from somebody from the audience, and the question is, how important will mathematics be in school or educational program of future generation children? Who want to answer this one first?
I'll take a crack at it first from my perspective.
Go ahead.
I'll say it's going to be absolutely imperative. Math is universal. It does not matter. You can be, you know, on a laptop on the ocean somewhere doing math. You can do math anywhere. The career is completely transferable. The impact is completely transferable across. It doesn't matter what it is. Like math is kind of like a universal language in many ways. It doesn't matter where you're from. It's going to impact you in one way or the other, right? And so I think that it's going to be paramount. That is first and foremost in the forefront of everything that we do academically. I think it's going to have to be probably the number one thing that that we address as a country here. You know, just making sure that, you know, everyone is really, really well steeped in the knowledge of mathematics and all the different tentacles of mathematics. Because I think that's one. Some folks, you know, they kind of see math as just like one thing, but like math is attached, as you all know, obviously, so to so many different things in so many different careers. So I really think that it's going to have to be part of like our mainframe, not just like something that's like nice to add on. You know, it's like, oh yeah, this is great, and we have this part of STEAM or whatever. Like, I think it's going to have to be really, you know, at the forefront of everything that we do.
Fantastic. Amanda or Oriana, do you want to add something to that question?
I can add something.
Go ahead.
I totally agree. I mean, I was a former teacher, not of math, but math is foundational for students. And I guess maybe my hope for the future, I can't speak for every school system, but hoping that schools maybe become more interdisciplinary, linking the things that students are doing in certain classes with what they're doing in other classes. So linking math with computer science or coding, or, you know, other things that they might be learning to really understand like the applications of, you know, why this math is relevant and important. So I can't definitely answer what I think, what it will be like, but that would be my hope for how mathematics would be in the school educational programs in the future.
A little bit like what Oriana was saying before, to avoid those silos of knowledge, but to have like this Renaissance kind of education that comes with STEAM, no? Oriana, your turn.
No, I think that they say everything already, but I think that maths will be as important as always. I think that we need it in our daily life, and it's definitely a base of so many other areas that we will develop in the rest of our career. So I think that basically it's not going to change. What is going to change is how we interact with maths. So I think that's something that is already changing. It's not the same when you do an abstract problem of how to get the train from A to B, or what happened if you have to go to the supermarket and you have to buy this and this and this, and you understand it more in a practical way. And I think that it may change how we study, but the content will be the same. I think that the challenge is how do we actually learn it.
Thank you very much. Talking about that, there's a question that Diego has asked every panelist, and in this case I think it's especially interesting. That's been interesting all the time, but in your case, because you are in contact with children, with parents, with the community in general, with teachers, and you may know very well what is lacking or what the children will enjoy having, what we can bring to the children and to the educational world. Then, Diego, you turn to ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Rocio. And thank you, Oriana, Nick, and Amanda. It was very inspirational. So my question in the others roundtable, and it couldn't miss here, is if you were a hackathon participant or a hackathon attendee, what would you build? What do you think is, as Rocio said, lack in the digital tools, and what would be your wish to a digital to learn or to teach maths to children? So maybe you can give us like 2 or 3 points or 3 advices to think about during the hackathon, to give them, okay, I will be focusing this point, or I will be focusing the usability and design or content, as Oriana said, what should be your advice for them?
I can start first because I think that you put it easier on me, because I think that we are trying to do it at WoWplay. I think that what is missing, I think that depending also the age, but the offline part for me is indispensable, especially when you're working with young age. The fact of complement the digital experience with the hands-on learning for me is crucial. The second thing would be content that it's not apathetic, it's just content that you could use on your daily basis. And the third thing will be, and I think that a lot of platforms have it, but it's not there all the time, and is being able to be part of a community. I think that big part of the learning is when you are connected with other kids and you are able to see what they are building and build on top of that. For example, Scratch Junior have built an incredible community around that. So I can take part of your code and build on top of that, something even bigger of what you have done. And I think that big part of the learning happens when you are able to see what others have done and build on top of that. And I think that for me, these three key things will be very interesting to see.
Thank you very much.
I would say just the biggest piece for us, from my perspective, would be real world application. That's the biggest piece. It's just making sure that whatever is happening is so as organically as it can be. Let it be that, right? Because once it becomes like a fabric of like what they normally do in their day to day, right? Where it's not something they have to say like, oh, this is a part of STEAM, this is part of STEM, or whatever. Like it's just part of my daily life. I'm actually utilizing these tools on my day-to-day life. That's the game changer in my estimation. It's like make sure that it's something that's fluid, that's as organic as possible, something that they can incorporate into their day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year. And then that way, building on that is organic, right? It's like it naturally you start like, oh, you know what, this is, I didn't even think about, I was doing this and this, maybe we could do this. And then to Oriana's point about building on someone else building on that, well, if everyone is kind of organically doing that, right? Then you have this ecosystem of knowledge where it's like everyone is it's like being able to play off of each other and really build something beautiful for our community. That's pretty much the 1, 2, and 3 of it for me. Frankly, it's the real world application for sure.
Okay, that's great. Create a community or even an ecosystem of knowledge. No, that's great. Okay, Amanda, please.
Yeah, I think there's already been some great ideas shared. So maybe my wish for these digital tools that these students are working on is trying to connect whatever tool that they have to their passions, trying to make learning fun. I think that's related to the motivation piece, that first question that we discussed. So they can, take these projects forward, so they can engage their communities. And there's a lot of ways to do that, connecting things with passion. And I think that it goes back to the mentor discussion as well, having those people to, guide you through working with digital tools and applying these digital tools. Interestingly, we're doing a global survey. We're partnering with some people this year to understand what children want with education for the future. So maybe I'll have to report back once we kind of have the outcomes on that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amanda. So, well, thank you very much. Do you have any other question, Rocio? No?
I don't have any other question. I think that we already passed the time that was allocated, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. So with those advices, I think that we have to send you all the solutions that the teams will develop this weekend, and then maybe you would like to buy it for your school. So yeah, with this, we finish the roundtables of this hackathon, and tomorrow we will be developing solutions, and I hope to doing and giving great ideas to become to life. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to see it.
Thank you, all of you. It was an honor to moderate this roundtable. Bye, Oriana, Nick, Amanda.